Will, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
We'll just let's have a little intro about you, what you're currently doing, and then we'll tell the audience about how you've come to be where you are now.
Good stuff. Okay, where do we start? How far back do we go?
Let's start with your name.
It's a good start. My name is Will Anderson, middle name John.
Hey, it's all important. Whatever, just as long as you don't leave your driving license around.
Okay.
Yeah, so what are you currently doing at the moment there, Will?
So I left a very cushy agency job in June last year to explore a new business, and we're about 10 months in since official launch. I can talk more to that business. I guess to give you some context, over the last 10, 11 years, I've worked agency side, helping scale digital marketing agencies. And prior to that, I was involved in helping brands build internal digital teams.
And it's primarily within Ecom space that you're working in right now, isn't it?
Correct. Yeah. So everything that I'm building now has been built through the lens of connecting brands to agency teams, helping brands build internal digital teams, and also through the lens of a founder myself, building my own e-commerce businesses. So when we first launched, we weren't specific to e-com. Made that call in Q4, which was a fun time to niche down on e-com. But it was a reflection that actually that was where 80% of our skill set was. And it was much easier to build the right sort of network and proposition around it. And that was a big unlock. I could actually talk directly to the customers. And it's authentic as well, because it's what I've been doing for the last 9 years.
It's amazing what happens, isn't it, when you actually align where you've come from to what you're doing now, and you think the path of least resistance to making it is something completely the opposite of what you actually. It's the experience that you've gained over the years that actually creates that unlock, like you say, isn't it? 100%.
I really feel at the moment it's come full circle, and I was really conscious to take some time out and actually think about what I wanted to do. I didn't really have a clear plan when I decided to leave.
No one does.
And I took a couple of months out just speaking to other founders, just trying to understand where the challenge and opportunity was, and also spent a lot of time thinking about the purpose. And you can kind of go through life and just go through the motions. And on paper, everything that I was doing previously was spot on. I had a great job, really enjoyed it, really enjoyed the team I was working with, but just something inside me just wasn't fully fulfilled. So I went on a bit of a journey just trying to work out what that was. And that led to me developing Growth Society.
Nice little segue in there, actually. So, tell us about Growth Society. What does Growth Society do? How does it help? Who does it serve? And how does it help?
So, Growth Society helps e-commerce founders and brands scale smarter. And having spoken to a lot of founders and been a founder myself, the challenge we're really trying to solve, it's hard for brands to understand where to invest and who to trust, because everybody in the marketing industry has an opinion. Everybody's trying to sell you a solution, whether it's a technology or a service provider. And actually for founders, sometimes they're not coming from a marketing background. It's quite hard for them to navigate that. So our model is relatively unique. It's a reflection that actually there's no shortage of talent out there. I didn't want to go and build a big agency. I'd been through that journey with Journey Further, pardon the pun. And I wanted to work with the best people in the market and help align the right people with the right sort of brands. So our model is we can connect people to specialists, and that's fine. They've got a gap. They need a trusted referral. And then our GS partner model, which is actually we go in, we help identify the opportunities. We're doing all the forecasting. We're setting the activation plan for the year. We're connecting to the right talent, and we're measuring performance and actually making sure things are going in the right direction. And it's built and rooted in flexibility. So if something isn't working, we mix it up, we bring in different specialists. And it's just a reflection really that a founder's needs today will change tomorrow. And a lot of agency models aren't particularly well set up for that.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. Being in the sort of agency world, that's what I guess from the outside we were seen as. And we were talking before about this and how actually I would argue that the agency model isn't dead as such, but it needs to change hugely because, and this is where you seem to be perfectly placed, because those founders, they need more, well, they need that fractional help to start with because it's flexible, but they also need that safe pair of hands to make sure that they're not being fleeced.
Yeah.
You know, they're not being, you know, led astray by, you know, there's multiple horror stories that we could probably share and it would take up the whole hour. But, you know, the founder, you know, we feel sorry for them a little bit because they're probably lost amongst it and they just need a little bit of clarity in that. I guess that's where you step in then, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the success rates of business as a whole, you know, the odds are stacked against you as a founder to actually make something that's sustainable and successful. So these founders, they need to work with experts, but actually accessing those experts at an agency can be cost prohibitive. You know, it can be really hard. Even if you're paying a lot of money, the reality of getting time with the right sort of people to help you navigate that is really difficult. And I think what we've seen over the last few years, and I think it's been accelerated by lockdown and COVID, but we've seen a lot of really good people go fractional and go independent. And they're doing it because they want to live life on their own terms. They want to work with the right sort of brands. So I think there's a lot of positive headwinds that allow brands to tap into those expertise, with just with more flexibility.
Yeah. Why not just freelancers then? Like, because there are loads of freelancers now. Like you said, people wanted to work on their own terms and they're trying to build their own businesses. And, you know, I guess the jury's still out as to whether a freelancer is a business, whether it's just self-employment, essentially. But why wouldn't a founder just go and collect a team of freelancers themselves? Like, what's stopping them from just doing that?
I think one of the dangers is quite often you'll see brands will jump to execution. So they'll see what the competitors are doing. You know, it could be, we need to be doing TikTok. That's a big one at the moment.
Yeah.
And actually, you could go and plug straight into a freelancer. And the reality is that will be successful or it won't be successful. And there could be multiple reasons why. But then the founder will go through that experience. And if it doesn't work, they've just basically said, okay, that channel doesn't work for us. So there's not that strategic thinking on top of it to actually understand, first of all, who's our customer? Is this the right channel to be exploring? Because that's going to come with more investment in terms of time and cost. So I like to think of it as we're applying that strategic thinking, we're guiding them through that process, we're making sure that we're filling all of the gaps, because it's not just managing paid ads on TikTok, it's thinking about the creative and the strategy and all those sorts of things. So we're just kind of that conduit between the specialists, the brand, really trying to stand shoulder to shoulder with them to make the right calls at the right time. And half of it's avoiding the shiny objects.
Yeah. We see that all the time.
Yeah.
You know, it's that whole thing, isn't it? It's, you know, we should be doing this, we should be doing that. It's like, well, just, you need a little bit of time to just sit back, reflect, look at your business, what's it going on.
Yeah.
But you've worked brand side as well. Like, you have some brands.
Yeah.
Just tell us a little bit about those.
So yeah, I've always been very entrepreneurial. That lights me up, running your own business. And actually, where I started off after uni, I got really into filming. So I ran a video production company for 4 or 5 years. And that stemmed from uni. So I took a year out of uni to set it up and then carried on through after that. And what I found from the video production side of things, it was a massive time investment, filming, editing, finding new clients. So I started to think about, okay, could there be a product angle to explore? During that time as well, I decided to get a short-term job. And I went into an industry where I think a lot of people go when they don't quite know what they want to do, and that was recruitment.
Yeah.
And
that seems to be a theme today.
Yeah. And I think it's a good foundation. You know, it's one of those jobs you're in early, you finish late. We were even wearing shirts and ties at the time.
Sorry, what are they?
Yeah, a long time ago, isn't it? And but I ended up working with some big brands and helping them build their internal teams, and that really gave me a foundation for sales and understanding how to ask the right questions and, I guess, align the right sort of expertise to the right sort of brands. And then I discovered the agency world, and I was like, okay, so this is a bit more, this lending itself to my creative skills, but still doing the sales side of things. So I worked at a couple of agencies in Leeds, and during that whole time, I realised that filming, I was doing a lot of stuff at night, and working a day's job in agency was quite exhausting. So I developed the first product idea for the business, and the the idea for that came from, I was on holiday, I was getting married. Yeah, it was a marriage, not a holiday. To remind myself. And I was reading The 4 Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss just around the pool.
Nice.
And I was kind of reflecting on the fact that I was still doing a lot of filming. I was working this agency job. It was hard work. And I needed to think about something that was a bit more sustainable in the whole kind of make money while you sleep thing. So then I started thinking about business ideas. And my granddad had given me an old safety razor, the traditional razors where you just put a single blade in. And I'd struggled for years with shaving, as you can probably tell. I go for the beard.
Just easy to have a beard.
Yeah. And so I started learning about single blade razors and cutthroat razors and high quality like shaving brushes and shaving creams and things. So that was the first business that I developed. It was called Groom Manifest. And we were selling other like heritage brands selling their shaving products. Created a really nice looking Shopify website. These brands agreed to sell via us. And that was my first kind of foray into doing our own business.
Nice.
And what I learned quite quickly with that was I was just chasing revenue year on year. Second or third year, everything was just getting harder to pay for. I had these supplier bills. Like we had a chat earlier about something that you're exploring, and the product costs were high. We were selling really high quality stuff. And the invoices were stacking up, and I just kind of reflected, looked at all the numbers, and realised I was in quite a big red hole, about 60 grand's worth of debt that we needed to clear.
And how old were you at this point?
So this would have been at my first agency. So this would have been probably about 2014. So yeah, quick maths. I was just telling you before, I've just been on looking after the kids for 4 days.
Yeah. the brain's left somewhere else. It's absolutely fine. So it was quite a while ago.
Yeah, right? Yeah. So it's kind of late 20s. And anyway, it was a really good lesson. And because I'd got to the stage, we'd started fulfilling product from the house. You go through that journey of, getting an industrial unit. I was employing a team of 2. And the unit economics just weren't working out. And I think the thing that a lot of people miss is actually you've got to pay for your advertising. You've got returns. You've got all of these additional costs. So that's when I really started to think about, how do you make this work? And the first step was I had to get different products. I had to build our own brand. And that led to creating Barbracer Brothers. So we sourced the product directly. There was more margin, built a cool brand around it, and scaled that up. And it was much more profitable. It was easier to run. I put everything through a 3PL. And that was a biggie. I didn't have a team that was employing day to day. It was
just for those that might not know what a 3PL is. Explain what a 3PL is.
Yeah, third-party logistics warehouse. So order comes through from Shopify. They pick, pack, and send all from the warehouse. And that was just a big unlock. You're basically paying them a percentage of or an amount per pick and pack per order. So it's just a lot easier to run than employing a team full-time to be there packing boxes.
Nice. That was quite a journey that you went on with that then, really. Just like that whole experience. So you're with what you're doing now with Grow Society, you've got that lived experience. Yeah. Essentially of being on the living room floor, packing those orders, and then making that smart decision to go to a 3PL. Yeah. And understanding that journey. So you now coming to Founders, you've got that lived experience, which I guess is, it's assuring for them, isn't it?
I think so. I think you build empathy, right? Because I was in a stage where, like, that first business, I was just like, this is going to make me millions. This is great. Of course. It's not long until I leave the agency job. I'm just going to go all in on Ecom. And I'm glad I didn't leave, because there could have been times where I could have just, gone for it. And, that place where you're in a big red hole is seriously lonely, because you're just thinking about the worst case scenarios. And luckily I managed to trade the way out of it, because we moved to a 3PL, made everything a lot more efficient. And then a guy in the United States just loved the brand, knew it wasn't very profitable, and just bought the assets for the brand. And that led me to create the new one. But knowing how lonely that feeling can be, and actually I think that's guided me pretty well through my agency career. Historically I've got brands out of contracts that they potentially couldn't get out of. I've advised on when they shouldn't invest in things, even though we're going to make less money, and just built some really good long-term relationships. And the good thing, if I go into my inbox sometimes on LinkedIn, and there's people I'm working with now as part of Grow Society, I was trying to place them in jobs like 13 years ago.
Oh, wow.
So I've always been kind of, I guess, speaking to the very similar people, whether it's been client side or the talent side.
So with Growth Society and what you're doing now, what are some of the big challenges that Ecom founders are facing right now in 2025? Because obviously we're living in an age of, massive change, age of abundance as well. Everything is easy to create, and the barrier to entry to start a new ecom business has never been so low. What are the big challenges that you're seeing from the founders that you're helping at the moment?
So I think if you look at how ecom's kind of trending in terms of a percentage of sales versus, say, retail, like it is on an upward trajectory. Then you have this massive unprecedented demand during lockdown and COVID, which caused a lot of challenges, really. So brands couldn't, they were seeing unprecedented demand. They couldn't get the stock. They then started over-ordering stock. Then you had all these issues with the Suez Canal and stock coming in that was like super expensive. And that's led to, when that demand's dropped off, that's led to a lot of businesses with too much stock, not being able to sell it and going bust. There's so many businesses have gone bust since that period. And then we've seen very small amounts of growth since. So I think it's been a really tough time for e-commerce brands. But when I was thinking about niching down into ecom, it was definitely a consideration. There's easier industries to go after, isn't there?
For sure, there definitely is. And I just think as well, like you think about all those challenges we've had. I'd even go a bit further back and say like since 2008, the financial crash and just the consumer confidence and everything that's changed since then. But 2020 was an absolute shit show, if I might say it. But but everyone experienced a boom.
They did,
which potentially a false sense of security, potentially. I don't know.
Well, people were just operating with very different scenarios. Like demand was just through the roof, and unfortunately, that's hurt a lot of brands since. But I think the main areas we're helping brands with is understanding things like profitability on a daily basis. Quite often when a brand works with an agency, for instance, they're optimizing towards platform metrics. They might have been given some indicative targets in terms of what to aim for. But when you really drill down into it, a lot of brands don't really understand how much profit they're making from an e-com perspective. And when you tie in your advertising costs of goods, warehouse costs and all those sorts of things, you actually realize you're not making any profit. And that might be fine for some brands. There might be a strategic reason as to why they want to do that. But for the type of brands we want to work with, they want to be profitable as quickly as possible, and they need it to scale.
Well, it only makes sense. And we were talking about Wild before we went live, but and the very fact that they were only, like you said, they were only profitable in the last year of trading before they sold to Unilever, but they were massively backed. They had that venture capital to scale aggressively. And not everybody has the capabilities to do that. So what you're talking about there is looking at the unit economics, making sure that they're making profit on individual products and making sure that everything is built in as a cost to that, right?
So from month one, we're building out profit reporting. So we're plugging into the platform. So that could be Shopify, Magento, whatever. We're pulling in cost of goods data. We're pulling in all of the platform data as well, and we're pulling in OPEX costs as well. And what we can show on a daily, weekly, monthly basis is actually how are they trading from a profitability perspective, and then also bringing in lifetime value as well, which is a biggie. Because I think there's a lot of brands that still don't really know how to track and measure that effectively. But we can show by month and by cohort of customers exactly what was the return rate of those customers, because that obviously feeds into the conversation around what you're willing to pay to acquire a customer.
So that's if anybody was going to take away anything from this session, it's to really drill down on those numbers. I mean, it's something I've been saying for a while. Actually, it's like you got to know your numbers, but actually, it's what numbers? It's not just it's not good enough to just know revenue versus profit. You've actually got to understand the mechanics of that profit, right?
And this goes back to that lonely time in my little warehouse unit with a big 60k red hole. All the top line numbers look great. Like the ROAS on Google and Meta was good. You know, that should have been making profit. But actually, when you look at all the other associated costs, that's when you start to realize, okay, actually that doesn't really work out. And I think if you don't have that sort of foundation in place, and we've seen it with a lot of brands, eventually you're going to hit some pain. And so I'd say, you know, get that set up. You don't have to use someone like us to do it. There's external tools you can plug into platforms as well to do that. But I think it's one thing having the data, and it's the other thing actually, what's the action and what's the direction off the back of it. And I think the problem with a lot of marketing is there's no holy grail of attribution. There's a lot of noise, and it's quite hard for people to understand actually what's the impact of all of these different things.
Attribution is one of those things that gives me a headache, never mind, you know, an Ecom founder a headache. And I think attribution is just one of those things that I don't think they'll, like you said, there's no holy grail.
No.
There's never a clear through line of what the attribution of a sale is, or, you know, because, you know, Google wants Google to win. Meta wants Meta to win, and such and such like. But just quickly on attribution, what are you using are you using multiple tools, or are you using platform specific tools? Or
so I think the first thing is you get an understanding actually money in, money out. So that's where that profit and LTV reporting comes in. From there, you can start to see actually, regardless of attribution, what is the impact of increasing spend on Meta, or Google, whatever. A common theme is that you could probably walk down spend on Google. You know, you'll be getting a lot of traffic through brand. That's taking a lot of credit for other activities that you're doing. So that's usually a quick win. And actually, there's a conversation there with the client to say, this channel is going to look less profitable for you because we're pulling back on brand. But the reason why we're doing that is to free up budget to go invest in other areas. And actually, yes, Meta might be more expensive to acquire customers, but it's incremental. That's just an example. But I think that your first step is to understand actually money in, money out, and work backwards from there. And there's lots of different attribution tools that you can use, Triple Whale, Phosphor, all those types of things. They all have their own approaches and own algorithms to do it. So I think combine that with your profit reporting and kind of tie those two things together. And I think a lot of it's around, you have a hypothesis, you test it, see the impact, and you can kind of scale it up from there.
Speaking my language with that.
I know we're aligned on that side of things. So yeah, there's no simple solution for every client's different. And I think, you know, depending on whether they're a subscription business or whether they need to be profitable on the first order makes a difference. Just
looking at the liability, and it sounds like a bit of a loaded question, but the liability of attribution, obviously people might look to an agency for those answers, or they may look internally for those answers. Ultimately, the founder should have a knowledge of some kind of knowledge of attribution, right? And understanding that the money in, money out, because obviously, you know, an agency, it sounds ridiculous coming from me, you know, being a marketer and stuff, but there's only so much transparency that you can offer, because essentially it's never 100% true, never 100% what you want it to be. Yeah. The founder or the marketing, the internal marketing team, they should have a knowledge of all of that, right? Or at least a basic understanding of what you know, the money in, money out, like you say.
I think that's it. I think having an understanding of the numbers, I think that's one of the most important things. And if you don't have a view of profitability on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, I think you can get yourself into trouble. I've been there.
Yeah, it's just dangerous, isn't it? Leaving it all to a third party too.
It is, yeah. And the feedback I'll get from new brands that we're working with is that, you know, the previous agency thought they were doing an amazing job. And then you go into analytics and you realise that actually the revenue tracking there is completely wrong. You know, they're reporting on doing more revenue than actually what they've seen through the tills, through the website. You know, and that's quite common. And we were having a conversation earlier that actually the first step is to make sure you've got the right tracking set up, and actually you can marry together. Obviously, there's always going to be a slight discrepancy, but what you're seeing in analytics versus what you're seeing in Shopify, you don't want that gap to be too big, or else you're optimizing everything to the wrong numbers.
Yeah. It's essentially marketing efficiency we're looking for, isn't it? Like we're looking for uplift, we're looking for impact. You know, we're not looking for necessarily, especially I guess at smaller numbers, you're not looking to dissect it too much, are you, at that point? But
no, I think the main thing is you've got the right measurement in place. Because that's where you're starting from. And if you don't have the measurement in place, then all of the machine learning, which all the platforms are increasingly using, is completely out of whack.
So that's interesting that you've brought in machine learning there, because obviously, you know, at some point we're going to be talking about AI.
I know you love AI.
Big fan, but it's more curiosity than anything else. How are people using it?
Yeah.
How are you using it? Where do you see it playing a part? Because obviously a big belief of mine, and not to sort of sway yours, I guess, but it's all about the input, and it's literally what you've just said there. Yeah. It's like if the input and the measurement of that input is wrong, what you're going to get as an output is ridiculous.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how AI impacts the industry over the next few years, because it's accelerating so fast. I think the way that we're thinking about it is how can you get it to do a lot of the kind of manual heavy lifting work that just makes more sense for a machine to do. You're still going to need that human input to actually make sure that the inputs and the outputs are right and we're coming up with the right actions off the back of it. Active projects we're exploring at the moment is creating the right agents to interrogate the data. So we're training the agents as if they're a strategist. So we're giving it the right boundaries. We're using a secure AI platform that can ingest the data. It can come up with findings and suggestions, and we can make actions off the back of it if we agree with it. Just trying to do a lot of the heavy lifting that typically you'd associate an agency, spending a load of time on reporting, always looking backwards, not looking forwards. How can we use AI to actually speed up a lot of that process, that we can focus more on the future as opposed to just looking back?
Yeah, nice. I think that's a really important point, I think, and I just want to emphasize that.
Yeah.
Is the idea of, attribution, reporting, that kind of thing, it is there to make better spending decisions.
Yeah.
It's not there to, look at mistakes or look at where you fell down, or, you can do that. Of course you can, because you need to learn from those, but it is for making better decisions. Ultimately that's what the reporting is there to do. It's like, well, right, this was great or this was bad. Yeah. What do we do next?
Yeah.
It's that whole sort of analysis point in the whole sort of hypothesis test, iterate type process, isn't it?
And you need to train it with the right information to give you the right suggestions or solutions. And I think that's where people who are leveraging AI in the right way are going to excel, is really understanding actually how it works, what's it's capable of. We're not just talking about ChatGPT here, coming up with suggestions on a proposed strategy. We're ingesting first-party data. We're giving it the right boundaries. We're asking it the right questions. We're training it as if it's a strategist that's got that knowledge to make informed decisions on where we go and get it to do some of the heavy lifting. But I met a guy recently who was telling me a story about how they've basically built an end-to-end solution. So they've got AI powering all of their paid advertising.
Wow.
Which has replaced an entire team. And their only job in the morning is basically to approve what the AI is coming up with in terms of suggestions. And that's really interesting and something that it'll be interesting to see how that pans out over the next few years. But certain things where it comes to bidding optimizations, those sorts of things, could be done by a machine.
Yeah. Yeah, I fully believe that it could do.
Yeah.
Whether I believe it's right to do that, I think it's different, and the jury's still out on that one a little. But definitely the actual sort of manual, the manual sort of clicking of buttons, I guess, is definitely can be done by machines. Where are you seeing people get AI wrong within Ecom?
Just every single LinkedIn post.
Yeah.
I'm seeing it. I
was waiting for that to come up.
Yeah. It's just like, if you are going to use AI, and I use AI to structure things or come up with a better way, because I could end up writing something that's 4 pages long that no one wants to read. So it's like, okay, so I've trained my own GPT to basically ingest my previous posts, get my tone of voice, just help with some of the structuring. So, but there's people that just use it, but just keep all of the stuff in there that is just AI. It's just like, you can give it a prompt to get rid of that stuff. So I'd say I'd sing that a lot on LinkedIn. I think you can clearly see websites that just use it to write all of their website copy, and it will default to using certain words and adjectives, and all of a sudden, and it's just not aligned with the brand and how they're trying to position themselves. So I think there's various examples of people not using it very well I think the challenge for a lot of founders is they don't necessarily know how to use it in the best way. That everybody's learning, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's kind of discovering it, and it's advancing so quickly. And I think there's probably a lot of value with going in and helping brands understand how to leverage it in the right way.
100%. And I'm seeing a rise of people like that actually. One of which I follow quite intently, and get a lot of value from what she's posting, and because there's new AI tools popping up all the time, and new ways of using AI, and I guess there's always a new prompt pack to buy off some kind of linked influencer or whatever you want to call them, but definitely some damaging uses of AI around on LinkedIn, but I think specifically within the process of sourcing, packaging, shipping product, where are you seeing AI be used like really efficiently or really badly? Is there really any good use cases that you can think of, right, with that?
So less so probably on, what did you say, shipping?
Yeah, like sourcing product, packaging, shipping products, helping the overall sort of ecosystem of an ecom brand.
Yeah, I think where it can be powerful is actually, ingesting the right data to inform things like margins and profitability and those sorts of things. So the way that we're training the custom agents is basically to interrogate the first party data to provide some insights and learnings, and that can do a lot of the heavy lifting week to week. And we're thinking about actually making that client facing. So once we're happy with the model, a client can go onto it and ask it a question.
Brilliant.
So, how did my campaigns perform over the bank holiday based on X, Y, and Z? It's got all the first party data. It's been trained in the right sort of way. They don't need to wait for us to come back with a response.
Nice.
So I think that's, and we're building that. We haven't nailed it yet. First stage is to get it comfortable, we're comfortable with it, and then roll it out to clients. Going back to your point earlier, I'm kind of navigating your question because I can't think of any better examples. But I think where it's been used badly is, and I think where it could be quite powerful is around creative. Right. So I don't know if you've seen the same, but on LinkedIn, everybody's showing, I made this AI UGC creator and it's amazing. And I think they've just got to the stage now where it's got 5 fingers on each hand.
Yeah.
It's looking okay. But as soon as you look at the actual product itself, it can't write the actual product label. It's all random language and things. And I also think there's something there which is quite dangerous, because I think a lot of consumers, they want authenticity.
Yeah, definitely.
They need something that's real. And that's why a lot of lo-fi content does really well on the social platforms. So I think there's a danger, because producing creative is expensive and it's hard work for brands to do. I think there's a danger everyone starts to lean into that stuff. And every single social asset that we see is just AI generated.
I guess it could be good for proof of concept though. Like if if you want to literally prove some concepts or test some concepts with regards to, specific SKUs or, new products potentially before you invest heavily in product. I guess that could be quite useful.
Definitely. I'm pro AI used in the right way. I think anything that can save cost, speed things up, and make founders and brands more profitable, I think is a good thing. I think it's just using it in the right sort of way. Yeah.
What's next for Ecom? Like, what's the future of Ecom as far as you're concerned?
Oh, big question, Paul. Big question.
Has to be.
I think what I'm seeing is brands are now much more focused on driving sustainable growth, and a lot of the value that we're adding for these brands is thinking in a more integrated way. So not just thinking about acquisition, starting with the unit economics, actually understanding what should we be paying to acquire a customer, not just focusing on acquisition, but actually thinking about retention and loyalty and all of those sorts of things. And I think a lot more brands are aware of that. They're investing in CRM and email and loyalty schemes and things, and conversion rate optimization, and just trying to make everything work harder and more efficiently. So I think this period of pain since lockdown, COVID, I think it's going to get brands to operate a lot smarter. Yeah. And that's obviously a good thing. I think there's headwinds as well. Like if you think of, a lot of e-com brands will buy products from China. And I think there's challenges around that. I think China's selling a lot more products direct, especially through Amazon. Mm-hmm. So you talked about barrier to entry earlier. it's really easy for someone to develop a Shopify website, source a product and sell it. I've done a lot of that over the last almost 10 years, and that's fine, and that's great. That creates a lot of opportunities for entrepreneurs to scale brands. But I think the challenge you've got now is China's selling a lot more direct, and I think that will only increase.
Yeah.
And that's going to impact everybody's margins. And you've seen people like Temu, how aggressive they are on Google. Like the investment there, they're coming up on most of the brands we operate across, they'll come up for something. And they're just over-investing to get the brand out there. And they've obviously got some serious backing. So there's a few headwinds. But I think for brands, it's about thinking about having a distinct product, building the right sort of brand around it, and existing for something.
Yeah.
We did a big piece of research. So when we decided to niche down on e-commerce in Q4, had a bit of time on our hands. So we decided to come up with something that would help us learn from some of the best performing brands, but also have something valuable to take out to other brands. And it was all around, okay, let's track 10 of the fastest growing and profitable e-com brands across Q4. Let's try and diagnose the signals that are like contributing to their growth. And it became a bit of a monster. We decided to track the actual orders that these brands were making.
Oh, wow.
Which I'd never seen done before. I'm not going to take credit for being the first person, but someone can prove me wrong. Comment below. Yeah. So in order to do that, I figured out a way where we could actually track the actual orders.
Wow.
So this involved making physical purchases from every single one of the brands we were tracking, so 10 brands. So the initial list of brands, Sunday Times Top 100, privately owned. They have to have profitable growth over the last 3 years. We took the top 10 e-com brands. Luckily, they were all on Shopify. Shopify was the only way I could have tracked the sales, and ordered products at different intervals throughout that Q4 period to basically understand how they were trending in terms of sales. Really interesting to see different categories, whether they were subscription or not. And then breaking down, okay, what's contributing towards that growth? So we were looking at all of the creative they were deploying, how many assets, what type of formats, what channels. We're measuring CRM, so tracked every single email, tracking how they're doing from an organic perspective. Loads of different metrics went into it. And it came up with some kind of there's some clear themes that were running through it, the brands that were doing well. And some of these brands were operating in really competitive categories with much bigger players. And typically they were founder-led. They had a strong sense of purpose and something that they existed for. And they were approaching it in quite a holistic way. So they weren't just on one channel, they were diversified across multiple channels. And they really understood creative and testing. So that was really interesting insights, and even just monitoring how many emails are they sending, what's the nature of those emails, has been really useful for when clients come to us and they say, what should we be doing here? And I can say, rather than go onto ChatGPT and ask for some generic recommendations, I can say, well, based on the top 10 fastest growing companies, this is your benchmark and this is what you should be aiming for.
Nice.
So yeah, that was really interesting. We're going to do another one for Q4.
Did you ever publish it?
I published it, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Where can people find it?
So they can find it on our website. So if you go to the top nav, click on growth signals, you can download a copy.
Nice.
On reflection, it was probably too much information.
Right.
And, ordering all of those products from all of those brands across all of those different intervals.
Yeah,
It was hard work. And if anything, I think the next time we do it, we'll distill it down more, because the feedback people were saying, this is amazing, but I've only read like a quarter of it. And you know what people are like, they're busy.
Yeah,
so
of course.
To sit and go through it. So we are going to do it again for Q4 this year. I need to find a better way to track sales and even validate whether that's of interest to people.
Well, it's of interest for me. So
yeah, okay, good.
You should do it anyway, just for my benefit.
Yeah. I'll let my wife know we're going to have a lot of deliveries coming.
Yeah.
So yeah, they can download. It's completely free, and there's some really interesting insights from the people that are doing well in those categories.
You touched on the idea of like founder-led, stood for something. How much or to what impact is the founder's story playing a part in how successful an ecom brand is, and is that the new differentiator? You know, we're talking about personal brand essentially, but you know, a founder's story, is that playing a part in it? You know, what are you seeing from your end?
It's quite a hard thing to quantify, isn't it? But I think consumers have so many options of who they could go to buy products. And actually, if they relate to that founder story, if they buy into the brand, you know, they're going to be more loyal, they're going to come back, they're going to purchase again. So I think it's super important. I think the way that I've built a lot of my brands in the past is I haven't had that founder story. You know, I found a product where there's demand. I feel like I can do a better job of taking it to market. And those have scaled to a certain stage. But I think in order for you to get beyond that stage and actually build a proper brand, I think that founder story and the reason why you're doing things, I think is super important. I think there's also a big demand for people wanting to buy sustainably. And all of these brands that we tracked, all 10 of them, had strong values around, you know, how they source products, how they operate as a business. And I think that's increasingly important. I think there's brands like Passenger who, you know, they plant a tree with every order. Even when they went into Black Friday, they did it in their own way. I think it's called Green Friday. And instead of planting one tree, I think it was 5 trees per order.
Nice.
And that was quite an interesting one because it showed that you could still, as a fairly premium brand that's got those strong sustainability values, you could still participate in that event, but just do it in your own way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's super important. I think it's something that's often missed.
Black Friday. That's Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Q4 in general. Yeah. Obviously, the biggest time for ecoms. You know, I think it's about 8% of your revenue you can make in Q4. How relevant is Black Friday still for people? You know, you mentioned then that people are going into Black Friday and Cyber Monday in their own way now. Yeah. Are consumers not becoming savvy to that now though? Like, are they just waiting for it because it's heavily discounted, or does it mean anything to the consumer or even the brand anymore?
It's a really interesting one, isn't it? That was one of the key questions we were trying to answer through this analysis. You definitely saw, like, some categories, it's much more pronounced Black Friday than others. I mean, all the kind of the health and wellness brands that we were tracking, the sort of jumps that across that period aren't as pronounced as other categories. Like, their big swing is come January, healthy me, healthy living, and it kind of swings the other way. I think what was really interesting is some brands that didn't participate in any sort of discount still doing really well. Yeah. You look at Adenola, who've had huge growth over the last few years. Do you know them?
I've heard of them. Yeah. I don't think I've looked at them for a while.
So they were a business that I think at a certain stage they were feeling a lot of pain and actually not sure if it could be something that could be long term. And then they developed it's like a leggings product, and then they're quite famous for the hoodie as well. They don't do any sort of seasonal discounting, yet they saw the highest jump in terms of sales across that period. So I think for brands, it's important to remember that demand will be much higher then. You don't necessarily need to do a discount. You know, if that's not part of your proposition, you'll still perform well over that period without having to do it. Hawkstone, Jeremy Clarkson's brand that he's associated with, I loved the way that they kind of executed creative across that period. I think they did it last year as well, but they were like, we are doing 0% off over this period. And it's like when everyone's, you know, zigging, he's zagging, and they're coming up with a different way to, you know, they're standing behind the product. It's actually, we're supporting British farmers. We don't need to drop our prices.
This is kind of what I mean. You know, there's a client that we work with as well, and they don't participate. Yeah. And they do their own sort of version of it, but they do it in December, I think. Right. You know, between Black Friday and so they do their own thing and go around sort of Q4 in a completely different way and still do really, really well. Yeah. I guess, is it just, you know, you mentioned obviously the demand being there. Yeah. Is it just that the consumers are more willing to spend across those 3 months of the year? Like, what is it about Q4? Is it because it's seasonal? Is it because it's Christmas coming up? Yeah. Or
I think part of it
sounds really obvious, but you know,
I think part of it is people are being primed that's the best time to go shopping, because that's when you're going to get the best deals.
We have no affiliation with Amazon, by the way.
Yeah, that wasn't meant to be an Amazon reference. Yeah, so I think people are primed for it. I think obviously it's coming up to Christmas, so they're going to start thinking about, you know, it's obviously a lot of gifting around that period. you've got, I think this year it was aligned with payday. And I think this coming year it's aligned with payday. That made a big difference versus, so it was up on last year, the overall numbers. So yeah, I think there's a lot going on. I personally think as a consumer, if I'm bought into a brand and I've purchased earlier in the year and they go on sale 90% off during that weekend, I just think that's a really bad impression for the customers that invested in you the rest of the year.
That's interesting. Yeah. It's the impression you're leaving on your existing customers. Yeah.
And unfortunately, and this happens in lots of different categories, not just Black Friday, but you prime your customers to wait for those sales. And that puts a lot of pressure on the business, and your margins aren't as good and your customers get used to it. Whereas if you look at like the Adenolas, the Hawkstones, people like that, they're going to have more sustained demand. They're still going to see increases during those periods, but they're maximising the margin and profitability. So I think for a lot of brands, if you can get out of that sort of cycle of discounting and promotions, which is really hard to do in certain categories, some categories are just constantly on promotions, and that's the way they have to operate. But you have to buy that awareness and trust from consumers. Like Adenola were doing really high profile collaborations with like the Kylie Jenner, I think it was. So they're investing in getting that brand out there, and not all brands can do that. They have to compete on price because they don't have a strong brand around it.
So just around Q4, final point around Q4. In your with your expertise and in your experience, when should a brand be getting ready for Q4? Like really serious about getting ready? Because I don't know about you, but in our experience, it's always been an afterthought. Yeah. Even though it's the biggest period of their financial year. Yeah. It's an afterthought, and it usually comes around like, we'll wait till the summer's over, then we'll prep. Yeah. What about you? What's your advice? Yeah, well, I think the brands that, are doing serious volumes, they're planning much earlier in the year. And I know there's a lot of brands, certainly in terms of like fashion, they're planning collections and campaigns, could be a year or two out. Wow. Yeah. But I think for the type of brands that we work with, I think probably summer, getting everything ready to go. You'll generally see demand starting to pick up from September. So I think as early as possible in summer is actually taking the time out to really think about how we're going to execute across that period. And Amy, who's one of our strategists that we work with, she used to head up marketing at Gymshark. She talks a lot around, priming the audiences. And actually it's quite competitive to compete. Obviously during that Q4 period, it's expensive. Yeah. But actually, how can you get people added to your CRM? How can you start getting in front of those people earlier rather than just in that period? And then using CRM to activate those customers. That's really good advice, actually, because that the priming of audiences, it's like you want that new customer acquisition to be as cheap as possible. Yeah. And how do you do that? Whether it's running a low product offer, or even just trying to get someone on your newsletter or something like that. Yeah. Just as cheaply as that to prime them. That's really, really good. We're kind of just coming to the end now, but one big sort of piece of advice that you can give ecoms for the foreseeable year, the next year coming up, what big piece of advice would you give those founders to sort of like ride the ecom storm as it would be? I'd say get the foundations in place. So measurement, reporting, have a really clear idea in terms of actually how your business is performing, daily, weekly, monthly basis. And then it's about tapping into the right experts to help you scale. And I think it's, obviously I'm going to say that because that's what we do. Of course. But I think it's doing it in the right way. And I think the good thing for brands now is they can tap into some really good minds and expertise, people that have been there and they've done it, and they can do it in a more flexible way. And I think they need to make sure that those relationships that they've got are built in a more flexible way. Because I think the danger is you overinvest in a certain channel, or you don't have the right sort of team to help you guide you through that. But it all starts at getting the foundations in place, the right measurement, and just thinking a bit more holistically. So not just focusing on, maximizing everything on one channel, diversify your channel mix, and just think about more holistically about your customer base. It's not just about that first time acquisition. It's about how do we retain and grow the customer base over time. Brilliant. Will, where can people find you? You can find me on LinkedIn at the moment. I'm doing a lot of activity to get the name out there and get the proposition out there. I'd say that's probably the main place. growthsociety.co.uk. We're going to be adding a lot more content around just highlighting some of the stories
of the brands that we're working with and how we're helping them navigate growth. We're also profiling the specialists, so the freelancers, the fractional support, and the agency we work with. So that's going to be on the website and LinkedIn. I'd say they're the two main places, and I'm always happy. I also advise companies on the side as well, outside of Growth Society. I like to work with founders with strong product and a clear vision and just helping them make the right decisions. So I do some pro bono work on that as well. So if anyone's got an exciting product, looking to take it to market, always happy to chat.
Nice. Thanks for your time, mate.
Thank you for your time. Enjoyed it.
Cheers.